Greetings, I'm Tom Miller, Director of the Sound Recording Technology program here at DePaul University. This is another in a series of lectures about my film score, The Complete Metropolis, a project 25 years in the making. Today we're going to talk about the instrumentation and the thematic derivation and leitmotifs in Metropolis. My Metropolis scores started out with chamber groups, and the score would be written for the instruments of the volunteers. As more students began to realize the value in these recording experiences, the ensembles got larger, and for the past 5 years we've had full groups of 25 to 30 musicians. I've often been asked why I write for winds instead of orchestra, and the answer is really pragmatic. Most college orchestras are focused on the Western canon and orchestral literature, while wind ensembles tend to be more open to new composers and programming interesting projects such as film scores. Metropolis is scored for 20 winds. It was conceived for one player to a part, but it has been performed numerous times with multiple players. The woodwinds are 2 flutes and alto flute, oboe and English horn, 2 clarinets and bass clarinet, and 2 bassoons and contrabassoon. The score also includes optional alto, tenor, and baritone saxophones doubling the bassoon parts for ensembles without bassoons, but I prefer the original instrumentation. The brass consists of pairs of trumpets, horns, trombones, and a bassbone, euphonium, and tuba. The score calls for 8 percussionists. Percussion 1 is timpani. Percussion 2 is suspended cymbal, clave, large marching snare or field drum, and 3 concert toms. Percussion 3 is the snare drum, woodblock, and cowbell. Percussion 4 covers bass drum and bell tree. Percussion 5 is crotales, castanets, a small button gong, and a large concert tam-tam. Percussion 6 is tubular bells, vibraphone, finger cymbal, tambourine, temple block, and a small metal wind chime. For this performance, I'm adding 2 additional percussion parts for 2 large taiko drums situated stage left and stage right. There is also a keyboard player playing celeste, harpsichord, and an optional pipe organ part. One of the most distinguishing sounds in my Metropolis score is the theremin, one of the most unusual instruments ever invented. Introduced by Leon Theremin in 1919, Theremin demonstrated it for Lenin, who encouraged it as a product of Bolshevik ingenuity. Theremin played nearly 200 recitals on his new instrument throughout the Soviet Union, and in 1927 he left with the government's blessing to promote the theremin worldwide. His European tour and concerts in America were huge successes, and in 1932 he presented a concert at Carnegie Hall with 16 thereminists, keyboard electronic timpani, and an instrument called the terpsitone, a musical stage which was responsive to the movements of a dancer. One of the first electronic instruments, the theremin uses a heterodyning process that extracts a beat difference between 2 oscillators, one fixed at 170 kHz and one variable between 170 and 168 kHz. Now, the very small amount of capacitance added to the pitch antenna by my hand is enough to lower the antenna circuit's resonant frequency. This instrument I built in the 1990s. It was sold by Bob Moog's company, Big Briar. Now, it's played without touching. Amplitude is controlled by my left hand. And pitch is controlled by the right hand. Theremin parts for Metropolis are notated in a type of graphic notation. The electronic elements in the Metropolis score were produced using samples that I have created over the years, and there are several sections that feature these sounds. These segments reveal my interest in musique concrète, an early form of electroacoustic music pioneered by Pierre Schaeffer in Paris in 1948. The basic concept of musique concrète is the composer creates music by taking source sounds and transforming them, originally through tape transformation techniques and ultimately through digital signal processing. As Rotwang torments Maria in the catacombs, the ensemble plays dense, dissonant clusters, and the electronic elements come to the fore. There are three primary source sounds in this section. The first is a blood-curdling scream recorded by a group of students. We hear this sound transposed down and also in high clusters. The second sound, a patch I call plastic earthquakes, is a large piece of plastic from a fluorescent light that created an unusual sound when shaken. The last sound, a patch called guitar monsters, was created with guitar feedback through a Marshall amplifier. This is the electronic elements without the ensemble. In the early part of this century, performing Metropolis live posed an interesting technological problem. In the early days of film scoring, a composer could conduct directly to the picture. However, for more accurate synchronization and longer and more elaborate cues, the musicians needed to follow a metronome. This evolved into the industry practice of all musicians wearing headphones with a click track. However, large wind ensembles, particularly collegiate ensembles, are conditioned to listen to balances and intonation in the hall. Recording sessions using headphones revealed the ensembles tended to be rhythmically accurate, but often struggled with balance and tuning. After several trials, I realized that all the musicians really don't need headphones. If the conductor has headphones with the click track, they can direct the ensemble, and the students can follow just like a typical concert. Professor DeRoche used to joke that a robot would be the ideal conductor because they wouldn't be influenced by the musicians. Metropolis was conceived as a surround sound experience with 2 speakers on the sides of the stage next to the ensemble and 2 speakers in the rear of the hall. This requires 4 discrete audio channels, left front, left rear, right rear, in addition to the click track and the video. It would be possible to perform Metropolis with audio-video playback from a computer using software such as Pro Tools. Unfortunately, particularly in 2005, the possibility of the computer crashing during a performance was a serious problem, and many schools did not have access to this technology. However, from its inception, the DVD specification required that players have the ability to play back surround sound audio from a Dolby Digital encoded AC3 audio stream. For performances, I created a DVD with video and 5.1 surround sound audio. 4 channels supply the surround sound electronics, and the center channel is the click track that would be fed through headphones to the conductor. This allowed performances at universities without extensive technological resources. When the DePaul Sound Recording Technology program incorporated surround sound into the curriculum, I began scheduling an annual large ensemble recording project where we could experiment with surround sound recording techniques. Silent film scores were a perfect experience because we could work with click tracks and video synchronization and yet didn't have to deal with dialogue and sound effects. As the ensembles got larger, I realized that these sessions would benefit from a real conductor, and my colleagues Professor Lewanski and Dr. Neidlinger have graciously donated their time. I also enlisted my sound recording colleague Dan Steinman to organize the students and oversee the recording process. These silent film scoring projects are recorded with a classical approach. The musicians play together in a concert hall as opposed to a studio. We experimented with various traditional classical microphone techniques, including the use of a Decca tree. The Decca tree is a recording method devised in the 1950s and used extensively by the classical division at Decca Records. As Metropolis is presented live in surround sound, I've always been interested in capturing that surround sound experience. Dolby Digital 5.1 surround sound consists of 6 speakers: left, center, right, left surround, right surround, and an LFE or low frequency effects track. At a convention of the Audio Engineering Society in 2013, I attended a workshop presented by Morten Lindberg, a Norwegian sound engineer and founder of the 2L record label. Lindberg discussed a technique in which 2 surround sound microphones were added to the Decca tree, creating 5 audio channels that correspond to the 5 speakers. More significantly, he placed the Decca tree in the center of the hall and situated the ensemble around the microphone array, creating the audio perception that the listener is sitting in the center of the ensemble. Intrigued by the spatial perception he captured, I added surround microphones to our system, and for the last 6 years we've experimented with different arrangements of musicians around the microphones. Unfortunately, the full effect of the surround sound experience can't be realized on YouTube yet.